And welcome to our Hashing Over History. This is the 10th installment of a total of 12, so we're nearing the end, but today we're thankful to have Dave Kay. A lot of individuals probably know him personally. I'm getting to know him better through this program. Again, Hashing Over History is a partnership with the Sesquicentennial that's going on between the Thousand Islands Museum, the Historian's Office, the Opera House, the Sesquicentennial Committee. So we're all working together again, bringing you these wonderful programs. Dave, I asked him ahead of time. Clayton's been home for him ever since he was young, so he has some memories. He's going to share some of those today and answer any of the questions that you may have. So with that, Dave, the program's yours. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to sit down because I messed up my back a little bit and fell on the ice the other day. Yeah, I was born and raised in Clayton. Basically, I went to Clayton High School and ended up graduating from Thousand Islands High School, the first graduating class from the new high school up at between Kiglis and here, Sand Bay. So we were first in that class. I know Melanie and some of the others were with us there as well. The Chateau, I'm the third generation to own the Chateau. It was built in 1922. My grandfather purchased it in 1946. And back then it was a tourist home. Upstairs were several rooms and 3 bathrooms, 9 bedrooms. And they called it a tourist home, which is pretty common in the day. Before that, the Chateau was a Coast Guard station for a while. And then it was built by Ray Parker. He was a land developer up in this area for a little bit, very well off, and owned several places, including what's now the Campbell Farm and across the street. That was all part of the Parker estate. His family still owns the boathouses next to me towards Clayton. My grandfather was part owner of Calumet Island. He and some businessmen bought it and were looking at restoring it. They ended up selling it the year before the fire. And brought some pictures to pass around. This is what, if anybody's not seen Calumet Castle, I can pass that around. And it was built by Charles Emery, and he made his money in the cigarette business. He owned American Tobacco, Lucky Strike Corporation. But where he really made his money was he invented the cigarette rolling machine, and he never sold the patent of that machine. He always, other companies that wanted to use it had to pay them per diem of every cigarette they rolled with it. So at the time, he was a very, very wealthy man. And he owned a lot of Clayton. He owned where the Golden Acre is. He had a place there. Owned a lot of different islands out there. Picton Island, Round Island. He owned the Frontenac Hotel on the Round Island. And so they sold it just before it burned, the year before it burned, unfortunately. And we wish it was still there today. It'd be a heck of a draw to Clayton. Growing up in Clayton, part of the things you remember, the sports teams, obviously. We had good sports teams. We played a lot of football, wrestling, baseball, things of that nature. And Clayton was a great place to grow up. We had a room to go out and enjoy things, do a lot of things. Back then we used to run cars around on the ice, and we'd buy junk cars and go out and play games with them in the wintertime, go around the horse track with them, see how fast we could get going. None of those things can be done anymore, obviously, with the climate change. But all through high school, Mom and Dad, when they bought the Chateau from my grandparents in '53, and we built some cottages there when they first had it, when Grandpa had it, there was 4 small cottages, and then Dad and Grandpa and my brothers, I was a little young, but they built the cottages that are there now. Unfortunately, sold them off in the 70s, but so they're all privately owned now. I wrote some notes down just so you remember some of this stuff. So, yeah, my parents owned rowboats. They had 5 rowboats for the cottages. So as kids, we were all out rowing boats around the area all the time, and we used to go out to what's known as Hogsback right now and camp on that. It was just covered with wild blueberries. And wake up in the middle of the night with a ship going by and you feel like you could almost touch it because it's crawling right by you there. Board Island, a small island out in front of us, we used to swim out to a lot and spend the day out there. And did a lot of things on the water. I've always been on the water a lot, which kind of led to where I am now somewhat. After high school, went to college in North Dakota and came back here. I worked on the tour boats back then, owned by the D, Billy D, and his father. And before McCormick's burned, unfortunately that burned in 1983. But they had tour boats, and we'd go over to Gananoque and around the Bull Castle, Clayton, and pick up people at Clayton and Gananoque, and then drop them off at the castle. It was a nice tour. We had a lot of fun with it back then. A lot of the old time captains like Danny Sullivan and those guys they were characters out there. The Conants, I don't know how many of them, Red Conant, Bobby, and we just had a lot of fun out there. All the yards they used to play games with the Canadian tour boats. We would be going down the backside of the islands, and they'd be coming up the backside towards Gananoque, and we'd see how big a weight we could throw for each other, and things like that. I think we had rolling pretty good back then. So the river was a big part of our life, and next summer, the Chateau turned, the Chateau was built in 1922. My mother was also born in 1922. So next summer we're going to have the 100th birthday party for Mom. It'll be a big thing at the Chateau. Anybody that knows her is more than welcome to stop up and say hello. She's doing really, really well. She lives in Florida in the wintertime and up here in the summertime. She lives with my sister Teresa, who retired from Fannie Mae. Which turned out to be a great thing. She had an early retirement, and she's been living with Mom for the last 10 years about. And they, like I said, they come up every spring, and they spend the summer here with us, and then go back down for the winter. Mom, as soon as it gets cold, chill, she's ready to go. So, we all know that feeling nowadays. But yeah, so she'll be 100 next year. We're having a birthday party on July 13th, which would have been Dad's 100th birthday. He unfortunately passed, but he was 79. But Mom's birthday is Christmas Day, so we're not all going to Florida. We're not going to get everybody to Florida for a birthday party, so we're going to do it right here. It'll be a lot of fun. And like I said, any of you that know her, she used to work at the chamber. She was one of the starters of the Clayton Christmas Parade. She was town clerk for Clayton. Matter of fact, our phone number growing up is still the town clerk's number today, 3512. So, there's a lot of ties back to Clayton with Mom and Dad. Dad worked at Wiggrass and then Grossman's and things like that. He was always in the lumber end of things and building things. I married Virginia Basdent, some of you might have known Bid, and her husband, John, or George, excuse me. So, I married her in 1973, and we lived here at Clayton. Our married life, except for when we were away at college, she unfortunately passed in 2016. We were married 43 years at the time. And, but that relates me to probably half of Clayton with the Basnets. And, unfortunately, of her brothers and sisters, Peter's the only one still alive. But, and he was the oldest, or one of the oldest. But, there was a big family there, and so she knew basically everybody in town, and so did I. Raised our 2 kids here in Clayton. They're in their mid-40s now. My son actually just bought a place over in Chateau. He's coming back to the area. And, you know, so that, they never moved too far. They end up coming back to Clayton. A lot of people do anyway. I got my first captain's license in 1977. I was running down here for Vinnie D. I was working as a narrator before then. So we've kind of come full circle now with the Clayton Island tours. And we started that up at the Chateau. And I bought pontoon boats that would be small enough to get in and out of the bay up there. And started that in 2006 with the Miss Clayton. Jenny and I went looking for a boat, and we found that one down in Florida, Bonita Beach. And then I borrowed her brother's truck, and we towed it up to Clayton. And started, and Debbie over here joined us that year. And we found a little niche doing charter businesses, carrying people out for weddings or the islands or parties. So we decided we needed another boat. The next year, Donnie Bedore built what's now known as the Island Girl. They built that right up there up at his shop. And so we were off. We moved to Clayton after that. Over here at the Gold Anchor property, we rented the dock space there and bought a little building for a ticket booth and ran out of there for many years. And this all started kind of with a conversation with Karen Getz, who was in the chamber, and about the need for a boat line in Clayton, and me being a ship's captain, why didn't I want to do something like that, and which I didn't know I did. And this was supposed to be just a little retirement thing, so we're going to have a couple of things going. It's all changed a lot since then. So we ran down here for 2 or 3 years, and I had to make notes because I can't remember dates. Bought the Night Heron, the last bottom boat in 2012 from Swan Bay up there. Been sitting there for a while and just getting ugly looking. And we bought that and we started doing nature tours around this area, history tours and things of that nature with that. And that's still running today. That's does a nice job going to Rock Island Lake. The New York State Parks took over Rock Island and made it into a state park. They spent a couple $1 million there. Really did a nice job fixing up the lighthouse and the museum making the museum out of the Lightkeeper's Cottage and a little bit of a gift shop in there. It's a beautiful place to stop and visit. Been a good draw for Clayton. It's kind of in my opinion, Clayton's a little treasure down there that we can claim and do things with the advertising and that to get people to Clayton. In 2017, we bought the Riverloop. Another one of my finds down in the Potomac River, down by Washington, D.C. And then we started doing more and more of the charter businesses. With the Clayton Harbor Hotel opening up, there was more and more need that, and then last year was our first year with the Osprey, which is doing the nice day-long trip. We go out with lunch and go to the castle, go to Rock Island Lighthouse, and it's a 5-hour tour, but you're only on the boat 2.5 hours or so. So it's a real beautiful trip. Expanded that a little bit, and you know, so right now we're busy enough with all that, and we stay up there. But it brings a lot of people to the area, as well as all of the other hotels and things. The Harbor Hotel's a nice class act. It really upped our status for the village, and for Clayton helped us a lot, and they shed a lot of business off to almost every other business in town, with their people coming to town and shopping and doing things of that nature. So we're really lucky to have it here, actually. The Gilded Age Graham Pullman invited Ulysses S. Grant up to this area. He stayed at the Castle West Pullman House down in the bay, but all of the media that followed him took such great pictures and stories of the area that really began all the rich and famous coming to this area. And the train came to Clayton, as most of you remember. The tracks came all the way right up here. Back when we were kids, this was a dump of coal for the freighters. The freighters would stop here before they go out on the lakes or back down the river. And they load up with coal for their furnaces. So as kids, we would, be climbing around on the coal. We'd climb up on the stand and jump off into the water. We had a lot of fun there. In 1938, they built a bridge, which was a bridge from nowhere to nowhere, and took a lot of criticism when they built that. But now over 2 million vehicles a year travel across that bridge. We kind of did. So it's been down a little bit the last few years with COVID, but over 2 million vehicles a year, and heavy with trade with the truckers coming across both ways. So it was a real big asset. Then they built the Seaway in the 50s, 52 through 55, built the St. Lawrence Seaway, which you can go 2,200 miles all the way to Duluth, Minnesota from the Gulf of St. Lawrence down there. So that brought a lot of trade to the area, not as much to the smaller towns here. I mean, we had the coal that we had people working at, but it's also a big tourism thing to see the ships go by and watch them, all that kind of thing. The Frontenac, unfortunately, burned Frontenac Hotel. And if those of you don't remember what that looked like, none of us really saw it. It was burned in 1911. It was owned by Emery. And this is a gorgeous hotel over on Round Island down here. And Emery not only owned that, but he owned Picton Island. He owned a big chunk of Grindstone Island. Picton Island, he raised fruits and vegetables, or not fruits, but vegetables and things for his hotel. Grindstone, he raised beef for his hotel. And of course, there's many stories about the fishing guides, the rich famous doing trains. Some of them would get on a train Friday night in New York City, get off here first thing in the morning Saturday, get on a steamer, go down to the hotel or any one of the other hotels. And fishing guides became very big in this area. They would row out with their skiffs, take them out fishing for the day, which led to another big thing for this area, and that was Sophia Lalonde. And she was a fishing guide's wife. And the fishing guides would take you out fishing as they do today, and then they would have a shore dinner. Well, with their shore dinner, the guide would cook up the fish you caught and they make a nice presentation and a different, everything that you shouldn't eat was part of the shore dinner. It's one of the most delicious things you'll ever eat. But she made this dipping sauce for the fish. And it became very popular. And it soon spread to the hotel down here at Frontenac, and from there, George Bolt took it to New York City, and it's now known as Thousand Islands dressing. The funny thing was, back then, eating fish was for poor people. So the rich, the wealthier people, like at the Frontenac Hotel, didn't, it was made as a fish dipping sauce, but they didn't like to eat fish, so it was beneath them. So the chef tried it on a salad, and that's where it became well known and now worldwide. The Thousand Islands dressing was invented right here in Clayton by Sophia Lalone, a fishing guide's daughter. First sold here in Clayton at the Thousand Islands Museum, or Thousand Islands Inn. It became very, very well liked in the area. But if you can imagine the fishing guides back then, and if you went out fishing, the women were still in big long dresses and hats, and the men were dressed up, and the guy rowed the boat everywhere. So can you imagine rowing from Clayton down around Island and taking them out over to Eel Bay or wherever, then rolling over to wherever you could have your short dinner, and then bringing them all the way back to Round Island and then coming home. It was a day's work for a fishing guide back then. And, but this area, if you can imagine it, with all these hotels, I brought this book that I'll pass around, but just for an instant, to give you a little history about it, it says the Gilded Age started about 1880, lasted until after World War I. The railroad terminus at the river's edge made Clayton the ideal jumping off point for travel. People would come by railroad. Clayton had 5 island hotels, and the town of Orleans had 5 hotels. They lasted a short period of time because they're all built out of wood, and if it started when the fire started, even though there was copious quantities of water, there was no way to get it up. The bucket brigade was a little slow, and that was about all they had back then. But just to give you an idea, the Murray Hill Hotel, 1895 to 1915. The Cliff House on Murray Island, 1876 to 1878. That only lasted 2 years. The Hub House, 1877 to 1883. The Pullman House, 1890 to 1904. The Wellesley Island Hotel over at T.I. Park, 1903 to is still standing and being used today. So, I mean, that's one of the only ones that made it. There was a huge hotel at the T.I. Park called the Thousand Island Park Hotel, 1882 to 1890, that burned in 90. And then, shortly after that, the Columbian Hotel, an even bigger one, was built. And that went from 1892 to 1912. And that's where that big green area you see over now behind the pavilion on Thousand Island. And when that burned, that took out several hundred homes that were to the east of it, with the wind blowing down, windy night there, I guess. And then, so they lost a lot of it, and they never rebuilt after that over there. So there's a lot of different hotels. The Round Island House, then that became later known as the Frontenac. So I'll pass this around just because it's interesting. There's some pictures of all these different hotels, and Calumet Castle, and a few different things in there. The history of this area that we find very interesting. So after the Frontenac burned in 1911, there really wasn't a high-class hotel in this area until they built the Harbor House a few years back. There were a lot of nice cottages and small hotels and motels in the area that kept tourism going and kept tourism alive in this area. But not until we got this beautiful hotel did we have something that could really have an advertising budget to help the area, do a lot for Clayton. I guess that's about all I got. You want to answer some questions? Or?
Kenny, you must have a question. You always ask a question. Yeah.
I'm stuck in the picture.
Yeah.
You didn't go to college for, you learned your, got your captain's license through the boat line and like that, or?
Yeah, I went to college, I got a business degree. And didn't want to work in the city, so I ended up back in Clayton.
Cause you held a bigger license, did you, like 100 ton or?
Well, I had 100 ton back in '77, now I've got an Ocean's 1,600 ton. When I left, some of you may remember the Victorian Empress that used to come into Clayton. I went to work on that. It was out of Kingston, but it was a U.S. flagged ship. So they wanted a U.S. captain, or required to have a U.S. captain and mate on it. So I worked with Ken Johnson, who came up here in the Coast Guard, retired as a Coast Guard captain, lived at Heritage Heights, stayed in Clayton. And he and I were captain and mate on there. I was the mate. And then that got sold a couple years later to Cruise West out in Seattle, Washington. And they hired me to deliver the boat out to Seattle. And then I ended up working for them a little over 10 years, going to Alaska, Columbia Snake Rivers, and down into the Sea Cortez. And then I went back to work, came back, Clayton, went to work on the Great Lakes again for about 2 years. All the time we kept her home here in Clayton, but Jason's here, I travel a lot, she'd go on summer trips, but then I joined National Geographic, and I've been with them up until last year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I worked in the National Geographic boats in Alaska, Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico, all of those areas. So, been a great career. I got to see a lot of water, a lot of beautiful places, but this was always home, so we always came back here.
Dave, is there any residue at your house from when it was a Coast Guard station, anything telltale things, or?
No, not really. We've looked through a lot of that, tried to find some things. They were dredging out that boathouse, which was all that one property, and we found lots of cases of liquor, so obviously.
Confiscated.
Yeah, I don't know if it was complicated or part of the drug of it. Rum runners back in the age, because they'd get over and get it in the boathouse and get it so they could use it, or, when somebody showed up, they'd throw it in the water. It was, one of the things that was still around from the Chateau days. Well, I didn't pass this around. We talked about the Chateau. This is in the early 40s. This newspaper article from their advertising, June 29th is the date. And she's got pictures of the Chateau. The bar that's in here went from the Chateau to what's now known as the TIN. And now it sits up in the KFC. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but that bar came out of our living room. Pass this around. The Chateau was a busy place back then with the rooms and that. And, like I said, some of you may remember tourist homes. I remember what the Chateau looked like. I don't remember some of the others that well, but back then, the bedrooms, and then there was like 3 common area bathrooms upstairs, and let me say 9 bedrooms. It was pretty interesting. And my father turned that into apartments when he was in his 40s. So there was 3 apartments upstairs, and then I turned them into the country inn when I was in my 40s. And in fact, it was the year of the ice storm, we were with Mom. That up there at the ice storm. Because we heard a tree fall on the roof on the back side of the house. And we thought maybe we'd cut something off, we shouldn't. But that was You're getting nice turret, you know, 3 miles right up there.
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question, so you say you grew up in the area, what are some of the businesses that you used to frequent often that are no longer around, that you, if you could have a dream, I go to this business or that business? Yeah.
Well, a lot of them came and went. Many of you know Arts, where the coffee shop is now. Hamburger and cheeseburger, macaroni soup, that was on his menu. We always went there a lot, surprising. Later in the evening, how the food always tasted better. The Golden Anchor used to be a great place over here when it first started with pizzas and draft beer. It was a great place for people come, and you could bring the kids, they could run around a little bit. And eventually they put a bar in there too, but before that it was really great for the people that were camping, especially on a rainy day. They'd come there and have pizzas and subs, and it was a pretty active place. The bowling alley, obviously we spent a lot of time at the bowling alley. Back then it was, they had leagues almost every night, and open bowling during the days and things, but we always had a lot of good times up there. Mrs. Byron's cooking was always just tremendous. She used to be up at the counter there, take care of all this. Of course, we were friends with her kids too, so she knows. Before 81 was built, this was a much busier town because they didn't have the bypass, and people have to come in from Watertown to Clayton and go through Clayton to go up north. And so it was a lot busier here then. The boat tours down there, and they had a little place with a viewing of a fish pond type of thing in the middle there, where people could come and look at all the different fish. I mean, there was always a lot of people walking around Clayton. Back then, I remember fire departments having field days here in Clayton, and it was just a mob scene when they had their parade and everything. It was just, the laws were a little more relaxed than you might say, but you'd see a front end loader coming through town cleaning up the beer cans and everything the next day, this morning. But the streets were just lined with people having fun, Canadians, Americans. One of the things I miss most about those days is we'd get in a boat and go over to Canada. We had friends over there. If the gas was cheaper over there, we'd buy it over there. If it was cheaper over here, they'd come over here. Didn't seem like there was really I mean, we always knew there was a Canada and US, but we had a lot of good friends on both sides. We grew up together, enjoying the river as it should be. And, the river is just the key to everything as far as I'm concerned in this area. Not only a big draw, but a great way of life. Unfortunately, a lot of people never get out and enjoy it like they could. You'd have people come up with we still do to this day, people bring their family up and they want to take them out and show them the river, but they've never really been out there before either, so they've taken one of their first boat rides and go out and enjoy the river. Yeah.
Dave, I gotta say how I agree with you 100% on how important that the tour boats are in Clayton, how much they draw people in. I remember when the American Boat Line was going, those hucksters out there, it was humming. And they drew a lot of people in Clayton.
Yeah, it was,
And you need to get the biggest boat in the island or something so we can be the star.
we're pretty much at the end. Maybe the next generation, who knows?
Is there a next generation coming along?
Well, I've got a son and daughter, whether they're become part of the boat line or this area, I don't. It's not in the works, let's put it that way. Okay. You never know.
If somebody comes to Clayton and they don't go out on a tour boat, they really missed out.
Well, the river is so beautiful, and it just is. It's nothing more you can say about it than it's a great place to enjoy. You don't have to go swimming, but if you do, you got Potter Beach over there, you got some other places around. All of the state parks have beaches, and you can go out and just enjoy a little bit of it. So it's not an expensive thing to enjoy the river. You just get out and enjoy it a little bit.
I have friends from New Jersey who finally came to visit us once their kids were old enough to leave home alone and they could come on vacation. But they had been up to Alaska and took a tour, and they met you there. And then they came down here and went on a boat, and they were astounded. That was the same guy. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Made a big impression.
Well, I spent 30 years in Alaska in the summers
That's neat.
on boats. It's a beautiful place, and obviously speak highly of it. And but I mean, we don't have the whales here, but other than that, we got everything.
We don't have 3 days of summer though.
Well, it's really, the southeast Alaska's not like that much. The further north you go,
Not too bad.
yeah, we when I took mom and dad, I took them mid-May, because it's almost 24 hours of daylight. Anytime you get up, you can walk out on the deck and look for whales or wildlife or just the birds or the mountains, snow-covered mountains, everything. It was a gorgeous place.
I really gotta agree with you on the firemen conventions too. Planes jump up and down when they used to have them, and now you barely even know they're going on.
Yeah, unfortunately. Life and laws have all changed a lot since then, and, you know, as kids growing up here, we had the freedom to do a lot, but one of the things we did have was, if you screwed up, you went home, and your parents knew about it before you got there.
Yeah.
And that was worse than law enforcement you'd ever got to deal with. Bobby Conant took the old Adonis and went in over on the Canadian side under the bridges. There's a lot of narrow channels, but you got to really know what you're doing to go through them. Well, he went inside Rabbit Island, and once you get about halfway in there, you can't back out or anything, and there was a power line across there, so they must have just put that out. He couldn't back out, he ripped it down. So he goes around on the next trip, he says, well, it's down, we might as well go one more time. We will never have to be able to go through there. The guy was still up on the pole. Ripped it down. He was crazy like that. He was a heck of an operator, heck of a boat operator. He was crazy.
Any other questions?
I just have to say I've been working with David for 17 years, and it's a really privilege to be able to show the river off. We started out with one boat, we now have 5. We carry, 45,000 people a year. I don't think people realize how many people come to Clayton to take a boat ride. We employ 45 to 48 people every year, more this summer. So he's a great employer for the area. So, we work hard up there, don't we, Beth? Yes, we do. We love showing the river off, and I thank David for doing that and bringing the boat line back to Clayton. So, really appreciate that.
Thank you very much for all that you shared today, your memories. That's the sesquicentennial certificate. So
Thank you.
And if you don't have the next generation, it sounds like you got a crew right over here. So again, thank you.
Thank you. We are